Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Economics with Robert Wenzel. I'm Robert Wenzel. This week's topic is mysterious maneuvers going on at the CIA and the Federal Reserve in reporting on money supply data. I happen to think that for an economist that's trying to get a sense for where the economy is going, the money supply data is the most important data to look at. It helps you understand where price inflation might be going, and it provides a good sense for what's going on with the business cycle theory. I've made some great forecasts in my career, including warning before the 2008 financial crisis in advance that it was coming. Most recently, in March of last year, within 48 hours of the bottom, largely looking at money supply, but also I looked at some stock market factors. Within 48 hours of the bottom, I gave an all in signal that we should be buying the stock market. And the stock market's been basically going up since that time. But but basically it's all been done because of my monitoring of money supply data as the key major component. As a matter of fact, after my 2008 warning about the financial crisis that was developing. All summer, I was warning. The New York Federal Reserve asked me to give a speech at the New York Federal Reserve Bank. I put that in a book. It's called The Fed Flunks, My Speech at the New York Federal Reserve. In that book, I include the speech, what happened around it, why it occurred, and discuss how I use the data, money supply data, to get a sense for what's going on in the economy and the business cycle. Now, the business cycle data theory I use is known as the Austrian school business cycle theory. It was developed initially by economists out of Austria. That's why it has the tag Austrian. But it applies to business cycle uh, anywhere in the world where there's sort of central bank manipulation of the money supply. There's a great economist by the name of Murray Rothbard who wrote a book about America's Great Depression. And in that book, he has a chapter on Austrian school business cycle theory. And I think it's the best explanation for how the business cycle works, explains Austrian business cycle theory better than anything else out there. I got permission to print that as a standalone. So it's available. It's called Austrian School Business Cycle Theory by Murray Rothbard. If you want to understand how the business cycle works, what the theory is behind it, and what to look for in a general sense to understand where we are in the business cycle and how it contrasts to other theories about what goes on in the economy. I recommend you pick that up. That's Austrian School Business Cycle Theory by Murray Rothbard. Now, getting back to my tracking of the numbers, I've been doing this a long time. Like I said, I've been watching this stuff since I was in the sixth or seventh grade. This was before the internet, before uh, personal computers. I used to get the data, take out a calculator, and every week check out the growth rates for money supply for 3 months, for annual, all that by hand, and write them in a ledger. And that was back sometime in the uh, Nixon administration. And Arthur Burns was the Fed chairman at that time. Then G. William Miller came on board. Then it was Volcker, Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen. I've been tracking money supply for a very, very long time. But a surprise came to me a couple of weeks ago. The Federal Reserve announced that they are no longer going to be issuing weekly money supply reports. They're only going to be issuing it on a monthly basis. I have no idea why this is so. And I have to add, at the same time they're cutting back on the reports, the CIA has stopped putting money supply data for all the countries in its annual CIA handbook. So you have to understand what's going on right now. Money supply is exploding because of the lockdowns. There's been all this money printed all over the place. In 2020, last year, the money supply grew by $4 trillion. That's a 26% increase in the money supply over what it was in at the start of the year. That's a tremendous amount of money that was put into the system. There will be more money coming into the system now because of the new Biden stimulus package, that will be trillions more. I think it's setting us up for tremendous price inflation in the economy. Tremendous. So it's very, very curious that suddenly the CIA is no longer publishing money supply numbers. I mean, you can sort of still get them, but it's much more difficult. You have to dig through each individual country's uh, data and try and understand exactly how often they update and that kind of thing. So the CIA is just making it extremely difficult instead of their analysts putting this together, which you would think uh, would be easier now, given the computers and internet and everything else, versus what it was decades earlier. Same thing with the Federal Reserve. It was had to be more difficult to put data together for the weekly money supply numbers 30 years ago, 40 years ago than it is now. But suddenly they're stopping this. In the old, as of earlier this year, I would get the report. The report would come out on the internet now, and every week you would get the money supply. That was roughly a week, 10 days earlier. You would get the money supply every Thursday, as of what the money supply was 10 days earlier. And this came every week after week. That is no longer going to be the case. Now, what's really interesting is they're now going to be reporting it monthly, but they're not going to report the number until 4 weeks later. So, in other words, in March money supply will not be reported until 4 weeks later in April. So in the past, I always thought that the best sense for getting uh, an idea where the money supply was going to how the money supply was going to impact the economy was based upon how much uh, growth or lack of growth in the money supply occurred over a 3 month period. And I could track this weekly, see ups and downs and what the general trend is. But now, curiously, it's only coming out monthly and it's coming out 4 weeks later. So I really only have like a month to sort of make a judgment on what the trend is going to be. They're making it very, very difficult. Now they're putting the weekly stuff out. Apparently, it's because it's still not out. Apparently, at the same time, they're going to release the monthly stuff. So that's going to be 4 weeks late and only really for the last week. So what they're doing is who knows why, but they're making things a lot less transparent. I should add, they're also making some other changes. Some of them are not significant in terms of watching the money supply. They're moving some things from M2 to M1, which the way I watch money supply does not make that much difference. They are also no longer reporting the balances at the that are held at the Treasury, which is very important right now because there's a tremendous amount of money there, and I expect that to shrink. I can still get that data at the Treasury site, but again, instead of getting everything in one nice little package, I have to look all over the place for this data. So it's either delaying data in some cases or making it much more complex just to find the data. And this is a period when it's much, much more easy to get data, to calculate it, and everything else. This is very, very bizarre, very unusual. And again, it's coming at a time when the money supply has exploded. 4 trillion last year, more this year, trillions more this year. I expect a major increase in money supply is going to cause a strong price inflation within months. I think we'll go to 3% annualized money supply, 5% annualized money supply. I'm sorry, 3% price inflation and 5% price inflation. Now the Fed is going to not be that concerned about 3%. I'm not sure why. I think it's totally irresponsible, but I don't think they're going to be concerned about inflation at 3%. When it gets to 5%, they're going to start to get concerned, but I don't think they're going to take the measures necessary to really slow down the money supply enough. So it could really get out of hand. 3% inflation is in the bag as far as I'm concerned. 5% is very, very close. That inflation, as measured by government indexes, is extremely likely. And then I think the potential for 10% inflation down the road, 12 months to 18 months cannot be ruled out. But it's going to be much more difficult for anybody like me who's an analyst who looks at the money supply numbers to get a sense for how it's developing. We're getting the data very, very slowly now. And if there's a turn, we're not going to know about it right away. It's going to be really old money supply data for at least 4 weeks. But really, if you look at it in terms of the way we got it before, I mean, it's 6 to 8 weeks. Where it was weekly, we could see what was going on. Now it's monthly and then a delay of 4 weeks. So very, very curious things going on. CIA stops reporting money supply. The Federal Reserve is slowing down money supply reporting dramatically. Again, in the background, the data is going to be there, but it's not going to come as quickly. And it's more difficult to find for anybody else who wants to get a sense for what's going on. So I just want this on the record, what's going on at a time when there should be a lot of focus on money supply. It's going to be a lot less easy to focus on the money supply. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out my website, economicpolicyjournal.com, where I write Monday through Friday about the economy, economic policy, what I see developing in the economy, what I see going on with regard to different personnel and how they might be influencing the economy, what might be going on behind the scenes with regard to personnel. It's all there, Monday through Friday. And then I also put posts on Saturday and Sunday. I don't stop. It's every day of the week. Check it out. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with another episode next week, Sunday, which is released at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.